In the shadows of medieval Europe, a microscopic killer silently claimed countless lives, triggered mass hallucinations, and potentially fueled witch hunts. This is the story of Claviceps purpurea, the ergot fungus, a parasitic organism that infected rye bread and unleashed a terrifying condition known as ergotism. Join us as we explore how this seemingly insignificant fungus altered the course of European history, influenced religious practices, and eventually transformed from a deadly poison into life-saving medicine. Claviceps purpurea is a parasitic fungus that infects rye and other cereal grains, producing toxic alkaloids that when consumed lead to ergotism. This devastating condition manifested in two distinct forms. Gangrenous ergotism caused severe blood vessel constriction, eventually leading to limb loss as extremities blackened and rotted away. Convulsive ergotism, perhaps even more terrifying, triggered violent hallucinations, uncontrollable spasms, and states of psychosis that left victims and witnesses alike convinced of supernatural involvement. The condition earned the name St. Anthony's fire for the intense burning sensation victims experienced in their extremities before gangrene would set in, a reference to the painful trials endured by the desert saint. Ergotism wasn't a constant threat. It flourished under specific environmental conditions. Wet growing seasons followed by warm summers created the ideal environment for the fungus to thrive. The fungus produced purple-black structures called sclerotia, or ergots, which replaced normal rye kernels in the field. These ergots contain powerful compounds including ergotamine, ergocristine, and lysergic acid, chemicals closely related to LSD. When these infected kernels were harvested alongside healthy grain and ground into flour, the toxic substances became virtually undetectable in the dark rye bread that formed the dietary staple of medieval peasants. The poor had no way of knowing their daily bread harbored a deadly poison. For a fungal pathogen, Claviceps purpurea possesses a remarkably sophisticated life cycle. During spring, the overwintered sclerotia that had fallen to the ground germinate, producing tiny mushroom-like structures called stromata. These structures release airborne ascospores that infect the flowering parts of susceptible grains. Once established in the plant, the fungus begins producing honeydew, a sticky, sugar-rich substance containing conidia, or asexual spores. This sweet secretion attracts insects that inadvertently spread the infection to other plants as they move through the fields. As the grain matures, the fungus forms its characteristic ergot bodies in place of regular kernels, completing its annual cycle of destruction and ensuring its survival into the next growing season. Medieval farming practices unwittingly created perfect conditions for ergot contamination to spread and worsen. Field rotation was poorly understood during this period, and farmers frequently planted rye in the same soil year after year. This practice allowed the fungus to establish persistent colonies in fields, with each season's infection becoming more severe than the last. Additionally, the common practice of harvesting grain in damp conditions further encouraged fungal growth. Once harvested, grain was often stored in poorly ventilated granaries where darkness and moisture created perfect environments for continued fungal development and toxin production. The medieval agricultural system was inadvertently designed to maximize ergot contamination with devastating consequences for the population. The scale of ergotism outbreaks throughout European history was truly staggering. Historical records document catastrophic epidemics that decimated entire regions. In 944 CE, an estimated 40,000 people perished from ergotism in southern France alone. The Annales Santensis Chronicle recorded that in 857, a great plague of swollen blisters consumed the people by a loathsome rot, so that their limbs were loosened and fell off before death. The horror of these epidemics is difficult to imagine. Entire villages sometimes succumbed, with mortality rates exceeding 40% during severe outbreaks. Even in relatively modern times, ergot continued its deadly harvest. One of the most severe documented epidemics occurred as recently as 1951 in Pont-Saint-Esprit, France, where hundreds were afflicted with hallucinations and gangrenous symptoms after consuming contaminated bread from a single bakery. The socioeconomic dimensions of ergotism reveal stark class disparities in medieval society. While nobility dined on white bread made from wheat, which is naturally less susceptible to ergot infection, the peasantry subsisted on cheaper, darker rye bread. This dietary division meant that ergotism disproportionately affected the lower classes, creating a disease boundary that largely followed social stratification. During the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317, Desperate peasants consumed whatever grain was available regardless of quality or appearance. This desperation led to widespread consumption of ergot-contaminated grain, which compounded the already devastating effects of malnutrition and infectious disease. Historical records indicate that ergot alkaloid concentrations in contaminated bread could reach levels 1,000 times higher than the therapeutic doses used in modern medicine for conditions like migraines and postpartum hemorrhage, enough to cause severe poisoning or death. Medieval responses to ergotism epidemics were primarily religious rather than medical in nature, reflecting the worldview of the time. The Order of St. Anthony, founded in 1095, established hospitals throughout Europe specifically dedicated to treating victims of St. Anthony's fire. These Antonin hospitals became centers for those suffering from the burning pain and gangrenous symptoms of ergotism. The monks' treatment regimen included prayer, herbal remedies, and most importantly, a diet free from contaminated grain. Ironically, while the monks attributed healing to divine intervention and the intercession of St. Anthony, their dietary intervention was inadvertently addressing the actual cause of the disease. By removing patients from their normal diet of rye bread and feeding them cleaner food, the Antonins effectively cured many cases of ergotism, reinforcing their reputation for miraculous healing powers. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of ergotism's historical impact is its potential connection to witch trials and religious fervor across Europe and colonial America. The symptoms of convulsive ergotism, vivid hallucinations, crawling sensations on the skin, violent seizures, and unnatural body contortions, aligned precisely with contemporary descriptions of demonic possession and witchcraft. Historian Mary Matassian has argued that the infamous Salem witch trials of 1692 coincided with climatic conditions that favored ergot growth, while the rye-heavy diet of New England colonists provided the perfect delivery mechanism for the toxin. Throughout Europe, the timing of many witch trials correlates with years of poor harvests and wet summers, conditions that promoted ergot contamination. In areas where rye was the predominant grain, witch persecutions occurred at higher rates than in wheat-dominant regions. The epidemic nature of ergotism explains why witchcraft accusations often swept through communities rapidly. When multiple individuals simultaneously experience hallucinations, their corroborating testimonies seem to provide irrefutable evidence of demonic activity. The specific neurological effects of ergot alkaloids offer a compelling explanation for particular witchcraft allegations that appeared consistently across time and geography. Lysergic acid amide, one of the compounds present in ergot, can induce sensations of flying or being transported, mirroring accounts of witches traveling to Sabbaths. Ergotamine causes vasoconstriction that can create the sensation of being pricked or pinched, potentially explaining reports of witches' marks that were insensitive to pain when tested by witch hunters. Furthermore, the convulsive form of ergotism could cause victims to contort into unnatural positions, strengthening beliefs that supernatural forces possess them. Those suffering from ergot poisoning might genuinely believe they had experienced supernatural events, while exhibiting behaviors that confirmed suspicions of diabolical influence to others. This mass psychosis, rooted in biological contamination rather than spiritual malevolence, led to the torture and execution of thousands of innocent people across Europe and colonial America. The connection between ergot and disease wasn't scientifically established until 1670, when French physician Denis Dodart identified the relationship between ergot rye consumption and epidemics of gangrene. However, practical preventive measures weren't widely implemented until the late 18th century, when methods to separate ergot from grain became common practice. The scientific understanding of ergot took a dramatic turn in the early 20th century when researchers began to investigate its chemical properties. In 1918, Arthur Stoll isolated ergotamine, which became essential in the treatment of migraines. More famously, Albert Hofmann's work with ergot derivatives led to the synthesis of LSD in 1938, a discovery that would have profound implications for neuroscience and psychiatry. Today, ergot alkaloids remain essential components in treatments for migraines, postpartum hemorrhage, and certain neurological conditions. The pharmacological significance of ergot alkaloids continues to evolve in modern medicine. Contemporary research explores their potential in treating various neurological disorders, including Parkinson's disease and certain types of dementia. The same vasoconstrictive properties that caused such devastation centuries ago now offer promising applications in controlling postpartum hemorrhage, particularly in resource-limited settings where more expensive alternatives are unavailable. This transformation from deadly poison to life-saving medicine represents one of the most remarkable rehabilitations in pharmaceutical history. Modern food safety standards have virtually eliminated ergotism in developed nations, though cases still occasionally appear in developing countries with less stringent grain processing regulations. The compounds derived from ergot have become essential tools in obstetrics, neurology, and psychiatry, fields that would have seemed like witchcraft themselves to medieval observers. The story of ergotism illustrates the complex interplay between environment, agriculture, medicine, and society throughout history. What medieval people interpreted as divine punishment or demonic influence was, in reality, a preventable fungal contamination. The centuries of suffering caused by this microscopic organism altered demographic patterns, influenced religious practices, and potentially catalyzed witch hunts that claimed thousands of lives. As we continue to face emerging food safety challenges in our globalized agricultural system, the lessons of ergotism remain relevant. The deadly harvest of medieval Europe stands as a powerful testament to how a single organism, invisible to the naked eye, can shape the course of human events across centuries, leaving an indelible mark on our medical knowledge, cultural practices, and historical understanding. The story of ergot fungus reveals how deeply intertwined our biology is with our history. A microscopic organism hidden in daily bread shaped European society for centuries, triggering mass hallucinations, fueling witch hunts, establishing religious orders, and creating a disease that followed class divisions. What medieval people interpreted as supernatural was ultimately a preventable food contamination that claimed countless lives. Today, the same compounds that once caused such suffering have been transformed into valuable medicines, saving lives through treatments for migraines, hemorrhage, and neurological disorders. Ergotism serves as a powerful reminder that scientific understanding is our most effective defense against both natural threats and the human tendency toward superstition. As we face modern challenges in food safety and public health, the lessons of the silent killer in medieval bread continue to resonate, showing how environmental factors, agricultural practices, and biological contaminants can profoundly shape human events in ways that may remain invisible until science illuminates them. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for updates. Your feedback is appreciated. We hope to see you again.